Hello and welcome to Virtuosity. I'm Corey, co-founder of Virtuosity, and I'll be leading you through this introduction to humanity. Every strength taken too far can become a weakness. Psychologists, like Adam Grant, who's written on the topic, call it the inverted U effect, the point where more is no longer better, where the very trait that set you apart begins to hold you back. Humanity, compassion, empathy, forgiveness, is no exception. Too little and we become cold. Too much, and we risk being taken advantage of. But here's the thing. We can elevate the right side of that curve. Humanity doesn't have to collapse under its own weight. When it's supported by other behaviors like drive, courage, and integrity, it transforms from too soft into a sustainable source of strength. Take Wrexham Football Club. When Ryan Reynolds and McElhenney took over the struggling football club, they didn't just write a mission about promotion or revenue or trophies. They wrote this: "Our goal is to grow the team, establish Wrexham AFC as a Premier League club in front of increased attendances at an improved stadium while making a positive difference to the wider community in Wrexham." Read that again. In the same breath, they vow to make a positive difference and become Premier League. And what's striking, evident throughout their show, is how this wasn't just words on paper. Their compassion and people-first approach was unique. Players weren't treated only as assets for their on-pitch performance, but as people with futures to build. The owners supported them in developing their personal brands and businesses so they could thrive even after football. That care created loyalty. It drew some of the best players to the team, and it inspired players to push harder and go the extra mile, because they knew they were valued far beyond the scoreboard. That's the power of humanity. When people feel seen and supported, excellence follows. Compassion and excellence, not as opposites, but as partners. And it's not just football. Alan Mulally, former CEO of Ford and Boeing commercial airplanes, often uses the word love in his language. I had the pleasure of interviewing him along with a few colleagues not too long ago, and he shared how he would say, "I want to love 'em up," and often signs his emails with, "Love you." For him, this wasn't soft sentiment. It was a deliberate leadership choice. And the impact was clear. It built trust, strengthened connection, and created teams far more resilient and committed than the outdated, fear-based command and control approaches he so often contrasted it with. Humanity doesn't weaken ambition. It channels it. But for it to work as a lasting strength, it can't stand alone. It needs the scaffolding of courage and integrity. That's where we're headed, to explore not just the power of humanity, but what must come alongside it, so it doesn't fade, fracture, or turn against itself. So what do we really mean by humanity? Humanity is genuine concern for others, the ability to empathize with their values, feelings, and beliefs. It's forgiving mistakes, letting go of grudges, and recognizing that people are fallible but capable of growth. Those with humanity actively promote the well-being of others. They build trust by creating space for learning instead of fear, softening conflict, and strengthening connection, proving that compassion and progress can move together. According to the leader character framework, humanity is made up of 5 core behaviors: being compassionate, providing accommodation to the circumstances of others, enabling them to perform at their best; being considerate, giving weight to others' viewpoints even when they differ from your own; being empathetic, demonstrating genuine sensitivity to others' values, feelings, and beliefs; being forgiving, creating opportunities for others to correct mistakes so they can improve and grow; and being magnanimous, showing generosity toward those, especially with less power or influence. Fun fact, the framework builds on the work of Peterson and Seligman, best known through the VIA, which originally included the word love. But when this language was tested with leaders, many felt the word itself created a barrier. So instead, these behaviors in part were chosen to capture the essence of love, while making the language more accessible. Imagine humanity as a garden. When it's healthy, it nurtures life. Compassion, empathy, and forgiveness enrich the soil. People feel cared for, understood, and given the space to grow. In this kind of garden, trust deepens, relationships flourish, and everyone benefits from the nourishment it provides. And when humanity is strong, our perspectives shift. We notice more, understand more, and see the world with greater depth and dimension, as if through the eyes of others. When humanity is underdeveloped, it's like barren ground. The soil is dry and cracked. Seeds struggle to sprout because no one tends them. This is the deficient side: aloofness, uncaring attitudes, and unforgiveness. Others feel unseen, dismissed, or left on their own. Nothing takes root. Humanity grows stronger when supported by other dimensions. Courage gives us the strength to show care when it feels uncomfortable or when forgiveness is hard. Drive fuels humanity with energy, turning care from passive sympathy into active support. Humility guides humanity, reminding us we don't have all the answers and that others' needs and perspectives will differ from our own. And accountability grounds it in responsibility, understanding that care is not just for ourselves, but for others as well. And when humanity tips into excess, the overgrown garden chokes itself. Too much water or overtending smothers growth. This is the excess side and the right side of the inverted U we introduced at the beginning. Compassion turns into overconcern, empathy into overwhelm, and forgiveness into exploitation. Others can feel smothered, as though their ability to process or choose for themselves has been taken away. That's why humanity needs balance and support from other dimensions. Integrity ensures we honor our own needs and boundaries, so our care for others doesn't come at the cost of ourselves. It's like making sure we put the oxygen mask on first, so we can continue to help others sustainably. Judgment helps us discern how much care is needed and when boundaries matter. Justice reminds us that care must also be fair. Everyone deserves a chance to grow. Humanity, like a garden, is about growth. Too little, and the soil dries out. Too much, and the overgrowth chokes itself. But when it's tended with balance and care, it becomes fertile ground, where people and communities can flourish. So now, take a moment to turn inward. What does it feel like when you're living the virtues of humanity? When you extend compassion, listen with empathy, forgive mistakes, and create space for others to grow? How do you show up? How do others experience you? And how do you experience yourself? Of course, we all lose balance at times. When you do, which way do you tend to go? Do you lead toward deficiency, the barren ground of being uncaring, dismissive, or unforgiving, where nothing can take root? Or do you tip into excess, the overgrown garden, where overconcern, overaccommodation, or overwhelm begin to smother growth? When that happens, what does it look like in practice? What choices do you make? What ripple does it create for others and for you? Are there certain roles, situations, or stressors that tend to throw you off balance, nudging you too far in one direction? And if so, can you see the pattern? For me, I used to almost always tip into excess, a dangerous level where I felt overwhelmed and at times ill-equipped to carry the weight of my feelings and emotions. Humanity would spill over until I was consumed by it. But over time, as I've strengthened other dimensions of character, the balance has shifted. Now, I find my humanity is more likely to tip toward deficiency, especially when I feel time-stressed, which, if I'm honest, feels like almost always these days. When I'm pressed for time, I notice the small ways it shows up. In meetings, I'm tempted to skip the warm check-in and jump straight into business. On a rush commute, I feel myself harden, less compassionate with the strangers around me. I remember one day walking through Oxford when someone stopped me to ask if I could take their photo. My first instinct was to wave them off. I was running late and I knew there were plenty of other people they could ask. But in that moment, I caught myself. I slowed down, smiled, and took the picture. A tiny moment of care. And yet I recognized how thin the line was, how easily stress could have nudged me into deficiency. I've tried to design systems to create more space and margin in my life, to give humanity a chance to breathe. But time isn't always ours to control. So in moments I know I'm under pressure, I have to lean on other dimensions to help my humanity. Temperance, to pause and remember who I want to be in the moment. Transcendence, to imagine the ripple my actions might create in someone else's day. I also notice another pattern. I'm more likely to drift into deficiency the further someone feels from my in-group. Research makes clear this isn't unique to me. It's human nature to prioritize those closest to us. But that doesn't absolve us. It becomes especially difficult when people hold views that are polarizing to mine, or when they've done things I instinctively judge as inexcusable. And yet, there's still an opportunity to extend compassion and empathy, even to those we barely know or barely agree with. That's where other dimensions become essential to help humanity. Collaboration, to remind me I'm interconnected with others, even strangers, and to remain open-minded about their experiences. Accountability, to recognize a responsibility beyond myself. And justice, to ensure care isn't reserved only for those I'm close to or aligned with, but extended fairly to others too, because that's the essence of human dignity. And finally, when my humanity feels hard-pressed, I hold onto a quote attributed to Roosevelt. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. I've lived this truth as both an athlete and a student. When I had coaches and teachers I trusted to genuinely care for me, I trusted their instruction. Without that foundation of care, I questioned everything. As a leader, I remind myself constantly, lead with care first, and the rest will follow. But every so often, I still tip into excess, especially with the people closest to me. That's where my care runs deepest, and where I sometimes forget that too much of a good thing can smother rather than sustain. I become overly concerned, hovering, asking too many questions, offering too many solutions. What I intend as love can feel like pressure, even control. And when I don't hold my own boundaries, I make myself exploitable. Instead of helping, I risk overwhelming. Instead of giving freedom, I risk crowding out growth. In those moments, I need the scaffolding of other dimensions to steady me, to prop up the right side of that inverted U we've talked about. I need integrity, to stay rooted in clear values and principles, to remind myself what's mine to give and what isn't. I need temperance, to breathe, to trust the process, and to resist the pull of always stepping in. And I need humility, to recognize that others are often more capable than I allow myself to believe. That sometimes the most loving act is to step back, to trust, and to let them rise on their own. The key is noticing. Noticing when the soil is barren, when you've grown uncaring, dismissive, or quick to judge. And noticing when the garden is overgrown, when compassion becomes overconcern, empathy turns into overwhelm, or forgiveness slips into indulgence. The clearer you see where you are on that curve, deficiency on the left or excess on the right, the more skillfully you can adjust. Sometimes that means softening, drawing on temperance or justice. Other times it means supporting your humanity with integrity, humility, or courage, to set boundaries, trust others, and give space for growth. Humanity isn't built in a single grand gesture. It's cultivated over time, in the steady, often unnoticed choices to listen, to forgive, to show care, and to extend kindness even when it's inconvenient. But like any garden, humanity needs balance. Too little and the soil dries out. Too much and the growth becomes tangled and overbearing. And while noticing these patterns matters, awareness alone isn't enough. To strengthen humanity, we need more than reflection. We need practice. We need a system. That's what Virtuosity is built for. It's a training system that turns character into consistent practice. Like a gym, but for who you are. You start small, one humanity behavior, one simple act of compassion, empathy, or forgiveness. Then, Virtuosity walks you through bite-sized lessons and daily challenges that help you build steady habits, one rep, one seed at a time. These moments are easy to overlook, but they're what cultivate trust, connection, and care. They're what make your presence the kind of soil where others can flourish. That's why we train, because compassion is easy when life is light and time is plenty. But when the hours shrink and our company tests us, it won't be our intentions that hold us, it'll be our habits. So keep showing up, keep lifting others, and keep building.